are remote can hear us. So Dan, Rebecca, I'm sorry, Mr. Cruson, Ms. Harriman, can you hear us? Mr. Cruson?
Star
Ms.
6.
Harriman? Star 6?
Star 6 stands.
Hold on one second. I'm
I
sorry.
don't know if the...
Try that again.
Mr. Okay, Ms. Harriman?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so let us stand to the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Ramsey, would you do the honor of reading our credo?
My pleasure. As citizens of our community, we will conduct ourselves in accordance with Newtown's core character attributes as displayed in our character tree. We will be responsible for our actions and show respect for each other. We will interact peacefully, productively, and politely. We will be trustworthy and honest and show compassion toward others. Newtown's continued success is contingent upon our ability to persevere, to follow through with our commitments, and to stay focused on the greater good.
Thank you very much. So, welcome to the January 20th Board of Education business meeting. In this meeting, we will be focusing again on the superintendent's requested operational plan for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. I just need to see, okay, then I can skip the next part. So, moving right along, let us start with the Newtown High School athletics budget.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present the Newtown High School 2022-2023 proposed budget. Welcome to our new board members. I'm Dr. Kimberly Lamabuco, the principal, and Matt Memoli, the athletic director from the high school. Please don't be intimidated by the high school or our budget. Of course, I'm a little biased, but I think it's an amazing place, and we'd like to invite you to learn about many of the things that we have to offer, much of which you'll hear about tonight in our operational budget. Additionally, I'd like to start by publicly thanking my exceptional staff, as it continues to be incredibly challenging, but they've risen to the occasion time and time again to make sure our students are educated and cared for. As you heard from Dr. Rodriguez, our graduation rate at the high school is 98.4%, even in the thick of a pandemic. We're extremely proud of this statistic and kept that at the forefront while creating what we believe to be a thoughtful yet lean budget. As we continue through the presentation tonight, we'll discuss highlights from NHS as well as notable additions and reductions. Our overall increase for the 22-23 budget came in at 0.96%, much of which is a reallocation from previously budget items that we'll talk about later. As we move into the 22-23 school year, we have some exciting things on the horizon. First, next year will be the first time that our entire school is working under the same graduation standards. For the past 4 years, the state has been slowly rolling out the new standards for the class of 2023, which means for the past 4 years, our staff has had to juggle 3 different sets of requirements concurrently. We're looking forward to the full implementation of the new graduation standards that include a heavy focus on STEM and humanities and allow students to create their own pathways to success. As of today, at NHS, we care deeply about the social-emotional well-being of our students. We work to naturally embed this into our daily routine. All of our staff, regardless of their roles, have taken this approach seriously as we continue to see students struggle through the pandemic. It's a fine balance between providing an academically driven environment and assuring our students are emotionally safe and available to receive our rich curriculum. Of course, we have our school counseling department, social workers, school psychologists, and student assistance counselors, but we also have an invaluable resource in our new Teen Talk counselor who's funded through the NOVO grant. The addition of our Hope Squad, which is a group of students who are committed to supporting students in need and breaking the stigma of mental health, have been a huge asset to our school. And more notably this week, we have the comfort dogs that we've had a relationship with since the tragedy at the high school during the break time between all exams to provide a much needed stress break for our students. And of course, we continue with Project Empower, our advisory curriculum, and our counselor workshop classes for all students. I'd like to take a moment to revisit a highlight from our budget presentation from last year. Previously, I spoke with you in depth about the great success of our Capstone project, which was fully implemented in last school year. While the project was extremely successful, we had to make some COVID concessions from our original plans, which ultimately resulted in a lot of online presentations. As of yesterday, we have 240 seniors that have completed their Capstone project, cultivating with in-person final presentations. Our students have taken this passion project and run with it. I personally graded about 60 projects over the last few weeks and was impressed, proud, and inspired by the work that our students did. Our students care about their community, as many opted to do projects that required connections with places in town, such as Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary, Dylan's Wings for Change, the Newtown Police Department, connections with our own schools in town, doctors' offices, local social and emotional support facilities, and so much more. I saw projects about cultural cooking, veganism, construction, plumbing, video game design, forensics, sports injuries, and so much more. The students are putting their 12 years of education in Newtown into action, and the outcome is truly amazing. Let me take a moment to connect the dots for you as to what that has to do with our budget. Sure, there's a line item that allows us to pay teachers to review proposals and grade final presentations, but the important tie is how we've created a senior capstone class, which we've continued from last year. We currently have 12 teachers from every department who are teaching this as part of their full-time equivalent, or FTE. Not only has this benefited our students to have dedicated time with a teacher who's trained in this process, but it's allowed us to keep staff while our enrollment decreased. Capstone has been a true blessing to NHS, and it's a definite point of pride for this year. Now, onto the large part of our proposed budget. The main drivers this year include the needs of NHS based on district and school strategic plans and required state mandates. As always, we want to ensure that all programs have adequate resources to maintain a high level of instruction. We want to continue to ensure that necessary technology and platforms are accessible to students and teachers. And although the scheduling process is very complex, and the high school schedule will not produce exact numbers until student requests are in, we want to assure that class sizes remain reasonable across all disciplines and fall within the board guidelines and are well maintained. On this slide, I've briefly highlighted for you the additions and reductions to this year's budget. Our certified reductions include 1 science teacher and 0.4 FTE from the social studies department. We always try to keep our staff intact, particularly after 2 challenging years, so it's important to note that these reductions are both possible through expected retirements. We're able to comfortably absorb these positions without class sizes being negatively impacted, as you'll see on the next slide. We're also reducing in 2 other areas. After a long relationship with Region 14 in Nanawag High School, we'll no longer have students attending their school. Newtown students pursuing vocational or agricultural programs will now be exclusively at Chapag High School in Region 12. Although our partnership with Region 12 began several years ago, the 22-23 school year will be the first time that all 4 grades of students will be attending Chapag High School. This is an overall cost savings as there's fewer students electing to go there, and many more are staying at Newtown High School. In the area of contracted services, we're reducing a program called Math Excel, which we used during the closure and hybrid teaching in our math department that's no longer needed. After many discussions with our math teachers, they prefer the program IXL, which we have a district license for already. We have very few additions this year, as you can see in our individual budget coming in just under 1%. The 2 equipment requests can be found on pages 112 and 123. On page 112, you'll see the addition of an alto saxophone for our band program. We currently do not have an alto saxophone available for our students to play. On page 123, under athletics, you'll see the addition of shot clocks for boys and girls basketball. And this is a statewide requirement through CIAC, the governing body for athletics. A large bulk of our increases can be found in the area of contracted services. However, it's important to note that 4 of the 5 platforms that you see here were already included but fell under the technology budget. This year, Rosetta Stone, GameMaker, Chief Architect, and SolidWorks were moved from the technology budget to the high school budget, but are not additions to the overall operational budget. Kahoot! Is a free subscription, however it has limited access in the free version. Our teachers really enjoy using this platform, as do our students, and so we're requesting the more in-depth program, which is an additional cost of $1,000. Finally, under staffing, we're requesting the addition and continuation of our morning monitors. This is an organizational model that has proven to be very successful at Newtown High School. Each morning, students are assigned to one of 4 locations by grade, and are supervised by staff members for the half an hour before the bell rings. This has cleared out our lobby and our hallways substantially and assures that all students are in a safe place when they arrive to school, be it driving, parent drop-off, or from the bus. Finally, as I mentioned previously, a driving factor for our budget is to ensure and maintain appropriate class sizes. This slide shows the minimal change in the average class size with the proposed reductions in the area of science and social studies. Although we can never be sure of the exact class sizes until course requests are submitted, you can see that the overall number of students will be virtually the same as the average sizes from this year, even with our proposed reductions. That concludes my budget presentation, and Matt and I would be happy to answer any questions for you.
I'd like to start with Dan, Mr. Cruson, and Ms. Harriman. Mr. Cruson, Ms. Harriman, have you any questions?
I don't have any at this time.
I don't have any either, but I can just say on a personal note that having a child at the high school now, I can agree that it is a wonderful place. And so I thank you both and your entire team for all the hard work you do, and the attention to detail in your budget is really appreciated as well.
Thank you.
And now back to the present board members. Are there any questions? Mr. Ramsey?
Thank you very much. First, I just want to say how impressed I am with the, I'll call them alternative activities, you know, where some students are attending the VO Ag programs. That's really a good thing, the Ed Advance, and all the different activity-oriented subjects you have, you know, such as the cooking and the technology. It's just a ton of things going on there that's really great, that appeals to people that aren't necessarily going to go into a standard academic post-high school program. So my question is, why is it that less students are going to the Woodbury and the Chapag Ag schools? Is there a reason for that? Do you expect that to increase again, or why is that?
So I think there's a couple things, right, related to that. One is that it's less students just by number, but the percentage of our overall population remains the same, right? So we had typically 13 students going, between 13 and 15 students 5 or 6 years ago, when we had probably 300 more students in our school. So now we do have less students, so the cost is less, but it's an overall kind of a matched percentage of our current population. I do think that Chapag is further, and I think that plays in for some students. You know, Mr. Moros and Dr. Rodriguez and I took a wonderful tour of the Chapag facility, and it is state-of-the-art and amazing. However, it's a commitment to get there. It's also a transportation issue if you want to participate in after-school sports and whatnot. When you're there, the bus leaves to come back to Newtown right at the end of the school day. So it brings you in the morning and it picks you up in the afternoon. And so for some, that's a deterring factor for those who want to participate in after-school events as well. I think it's also important to note that some of our students choose to go to Abbott Tech, which is a totally different program. But if they have their type of programs and pathways there, we do have many students that opt to go there as well. So I think it's, I do think we offer a lot of electives. We certainly don't offer everything that they have at Chapag, but we do offer a lot of electives. And I think for an 8th grader to make a commitment to go into that program, you have to really kind of be focused and driven and know that you want to make that type of substantial change when you're 13.
Right, so some of that would have to do possibly with the fact that you offer so much at the high school that perhaps there's not the need for outplacement of that sort.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think, you in order to make the commitment to go there, you really have to be invested in those programs, right? Some students are invested wholeheartedly in animals, and we don't have that as an option. However, those who may be interested in automotive or culinary or an art program that we do have may opt to stay at the high school instead of relocating to that other school. They also take students only as freshmen and sophomores, so you do really have to kind of be on board with when you're going to go there fairly early on in your career.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Larkin?
I just have a comment and a question. I just wanted to say that I had the opportunity to actually go on a tour with Dr. Longabuco at the high school, and it's probably the first time I've been in a high school since I left high school, which was a really long time ago. But I was honestly, my kids are younger. They're in 4th and 5th grade, and I haven't, I'm not a parent of a high schooler, so I haven't seen all of what you showed me. It was amazing. It really was. So when you talk about why, it just, I mean, I kept telling you, the whole time, I was just totally blown away with everything that they have to offer there. And you did a great job.
Thank you.
No questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Boros?
Oh, no,
Ms. Kuzma?
Hi, thank you. I just have, on page 117, where it mentions the homegrown tutors and then the note says the morning hall monitor. Is that what you were just referring to?
That is,
Can
yes.
you just explain that a little bit?
Absolutely. So last year when we were coming back in the first kind of COVID year, typically what happened at the high school is students came in off the bus around anytime really between 7:20 and 8:02 when they're already supposed to be in class. And they would kind of fill the lobby in a massive way and be in all kinds of hallways and places. And it made it very congested. So we knew when we needed to start contact tracing that wasn't going to work for us. And so we designated 4 areas of the building, 1 for each grade, the 2 cafeterias, the large gymnasium, and the auditorium. So now students in each of those grades go directly there in the morning. And so what it allows us to do is have a completely vacant lobby. All the hallways are completely open. Teachers can be quietly in their classrooms or in their office spaces without students kind of running freely throughout the building. And the money in here is to pay 2 teachers for each location for a half an hour before school every day for the school year.
So that's 8. You said there's 2 teachers.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. And so we've noticed that there are less seniors and juniors. Typically our drivers come closer to the time that school starts. But more of our bus riders, our 9th and 10th graders, are there fairly early. And they're able to kind of go to these locations, have a guaranteed seat, and be able to kind of do their work. So it is definitely something that came from the pandemic that is worthy of keeping and a model that's working really well for us.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Boros? Was it a follow-up? Mr. Ramsey?
I'm sorry, I have one more question about the administrative category, the administration.
Sure.
I know there's 4 administrators at your school, and I noticed that memberships are 14,400 some odd. What is that?
Memberships are for our professional organizations. So it depends on groups that we may join. Which page exactly are you looking at?
That's on page 120.
Okay, let's see.
It's at the bottom of the page.
Dr. Longabuco, I have the breakout, if you'd like me to.
Oh, that'd be awesome, thank you.
So you have the NEASC, CAST,
Yep.
National Honor Society, College Board, and SWC.
Thank you. So those are all memberships that we're required to join as a school, and so that's where we pay that from every year.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Gross?
Mine's a comment, and I'm so glad that when you spoke about Chicago, that you mentioned the fact that the children that go there are totally passionate about wanting to be there. And it was somewhat of a concern of mine that the 8th graders be fully aware of that program so that they know when they're choosing what's up there and what services can be provided for them. So I think we have that in place, because I think Megan Bennett, is it Megan Bennett?
Yes.
I think she's on top of that. So I just wanted to say, when we went there, the students are enthralled with being there because it's, for them, in their field of study, utopia. It's true utopia.
It is.
So they are doing well.
They're doing very well.
They're doing very well. They're doing very well. So that part is very good. And we thank you for all that you're doing to monitor the transition between the middle school and the high school for those 8th going into 9th grade. It's a welcome relief for me that the children have all of you up there providing for them.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Cruson, Ms. Harriman, have you any more comments possibly?
No, I'm all set at the moment.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I have a few, very minor, very minor. First off, in the description, you make a lot of comments to something called professional learning communities. Our new members may not know what that is, so if you could just explain to them what that is.
Sure, absolutely. So professional learning communities, or PLCs, are a model that we use at the high school to make even smaller groups within departments. So once a month they'll have a large department meeting, but our departments can be anywhere from 7 to 20 people. And then another Tuesday a month, they'll do what we call PLC in the afternoon. So they'll break down into a smaller group, and they may look at data, they may plan future lessons, they may review standardized test scores, and they work together to try to align themselves both with the curriculum and with where they're intending to go. So what we typically do is we use groups of 3 to 4 people. Sometimes it's within some people who teach the exact same course, so a PLC for US history or a PLC for chemistry. And other times we combined to align between what is 9th grade social studies and 10th grade social studies. So we do use that PLC time. We have had, before the kind of pandemic, we had PLC mornings once a month where we came in late, and then 1 PLC in the afternoon, so they were getting 2 total hours a month. Currently, we just have the afternoon model, and they're picking up their other PLC time during some of our PD that's built into the calendar.
Thank you.
Sure.
Now, on page 102, your statement for the Newtown High School core values and beliefs is really very, very well written.
Thank you.
It was just delightful to read.
Thank you.
Annette, on page 103, you say electives refer to chart. You may want to scratch the refer to chart language.
So that's actually a different chart. So this is from our program of studies. And the chart is, there's an exclusive chart that's in the program of studies that lists out exactly what elective qualifies for humanities and which qualify for STEM.
Then would it be possible to put the URL to those particular charts in at the bottom of the table?
Or we can give you the chart, whichever you'd like.
Well, for the public, it'd be nice to have it just be part of the, but I would love to have the charts too, so.
Absolutely.
Please.
Sure.
Another question. I remember when my daughters were in school back in the noughts, there, I think, was a required government course. What happened to that?
So that's actually a change from state standards. We are actually keeping the government course as a requirement within Newtown, but the state itself does not explicitly write American government as a course anymore. So it falls into their humanities, of which they need 9 credits. And if you are a college-bound student, which many of ours are, almost 90% of ours are, then they will continue to take our half-year government course in their senior year.
That's good to know. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Something I asked last year on 106, the number of students per class. Are the co-taught classes in here? I know that there are sometimes you mix honors and CP level classes, but are the co-taughts, and are they considered the combined level?
No, they're not. So combined level is what you just mentioned. Combined level is CP and honors. That is a non-co-taught class. That's just one teacher who's teaching both levels simultaneously. That typically happens in our elective courses where we don't have enough to run both levels. The co-taught classes are in here, and they're listed under the CP level, because when you look at a student's transcript, it's listed as CP US History or CP English 2. It does not denote that it's a co-taught class.
Okay. And so the reason that, say, English is for the combined level is 24.2 is because it's an elective and not a required course.
Correct. So combined level English courses are all of our senior electives. Not all of them, but many of them are combined classes.
Okay. Just a sanity check. On page 110, it says in the health education, it seemed like it was still going to be doing a process to rewrite curriculum. Did we see that curriculum? I swear we saw curriculum from the health.
You did. So there's actually 2 new PE courses and 2 new health courses to align with the new state standards. So they're actually the department that increased the most with the new state standards. They went from 1 credit combined to 2 full credits, 1 in health and 1 in standalone PE. So you did see some curriculum, but there is still more that is being worked on.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's it. Wonderful job.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, yes.
Matthew, thank you for all that you've done in that athletic department to maintain a tremendous amount of support for the children, for the parents, and for the coaches. The fact that we've got no emails is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Thank you for saying that, and thank you for all the support, and welcome to our new board members, and thanks for all that you guys do as well.
I was, I'm sorry, Mr. Memley.
Yeah.
I was thinking you were going to be giving a few words on the athletic department.
Oh, yeah, sure, if you want me to. I just take the questions that come my way. I'll definitely give a brief overview just of what we offer in the athletic department at Newtown High School. So I'm very proud of what we have in Newtown. We definitely have one of the largest athletic programs in the state of Connecticut. We offer every sport that the CIAC offers, and we also offer a downhill skiing program and a girls hockey program, which aren't brand new, but they're 2 of the newest programs that we have at the high school. So we have in total 57 teams that we offer between freshmen, JV, and varsity. So with that, we have about 95, 96 coaches paid and volunteer, which is it's tremendous. And so during the fall, usually we look at between 400 and 500 student athletes. Winter is a little bit less, between 200 and 300. And then the spring is the same thing, between 300 and 400. So with interscholastics, we also have probably what I believe is one of the top unified programs in the state of Connecticut as well, which is a program which matches special needs students with our regular education students. And the whole state of Connecticut has grown so much, so we're able to attend tournaments, host our own games or events, and then travel to other schools as well. So in the fall we offer soccer, and in the winter we offer unified basketball, and in the spring we do unified track and field too. So that's something where we were actually recognized last year as a unified champion school, which was a great honor. And our kids over the years have traveled internationally, so we've done a lot with unified as well. The thing that I think I'm very proud of was that this year we were named the CIC Fred Balsamo award winners for the state, which is an award given to an athletic department, which really, it says offers the best experience for their student athletes. So sportsmanship at games, fan behavior, different things that we offer in our athletic department that I'm very proud of. We do a lot of things. We offer an internship at the high school. This year was great. We offered the technology club for students, not student athletes, for students that don't participate in sports but want to get involved. So we were actually featured on the CIAC. We had a brand new video board at Blue and Gold Stadium, so we had a group of students who ran the video board. They did in-game graphics, they did social media graphics, they ran the scoreboard, we did hype videos. It was something that was so cool, and it was so different, I think, which I was really proud of too. So we have that going as well. We do community service for each season. We do a lot with college recruiting, so on junior night in March, I'll give a presentation for those students and their families who want to go and play sports at the next level. So we're doing a lot, and we actually, the past couple of years, we have our football team won the Double L State Championship in 2019, our dance and cheer in 2020, and then this year, we actually had a group of girls on our 4x4 track and field relay team. They were the top in Double L, but not only that, they won the Opens, which is the #1, pretty much the #1 4x4 in the state of Connecticut. And they're only juniors who won sophomore, so they'll be back for this year too, which was great. So those are just some things that we offer. And again, the support I have from Dr. Longabuco, from the coaches in our school. We have a ton of coaches who have been there for 10, 15, 20 years. And in a society now where a lot of our coaches are outside people who are not our teachers, we're very lucky to have a lot of invested teachers who will still come back and coach after the school day is done. So yeah, that's pretty much my spiel for our athletic program.
Are there any questions? Let me take the people who are at home right now. Ms. Harriman and Mr. Cruson, do you have any questions for Mr. Mills?
I have a quick question, and it's actually probably for Ms. Vadas, but it relates to Mr. Memley's budget. And it was a question that I neglected to ask last night. It's about the transportation contract. So I noticed that in Mr. Memley's budget, there's an increase in student transportation based on the acknowledgement that our transportation contract will likely go up next year. I know, can you just remind us what the timeline for that is and when we might know what those actual transportation costs would be?
Maybe tomorrow? So I wanted to mention, last night I forgot to mention, the bids are due tomorrow at 2 o'clock, so we'll have more information, probably next week for you. But we did put in about 8%.
Right. Thank you so much. Yeah, I saw that, and I noticed obviously it's also a big one of our budget drivers. So I was just hoping that we'd have updated information as we move through this process, and it sounds like we will. So I appreciate that. And Mr. Memley, you know how much I love the athletic program. Have a really strong personal interest in it, and I do appreciate all the work that you do there. And I know your job is so big, and your team is wonderful. So I appreciate that, both as a board member, a community member, and a parent. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cruson?
I'm good at the moment, thank you.
Mr. Ramsey?
I just want to say, generally speaking, and looking, through your presentation in the book, that it's extremely impressive how many students, as a percentage, are participating in extracurricular activities in general. That's just awesome, and that translates into higher academic achievement. But in the area of athletics, it's really quite amazing how many students you have participating in all these different athletic teams. And for me, that's just as important as the high level of achievement in terms of their winning, various state titles and all that good stuff. So I wanted to make that point.
Thanks, Tom. We do offer a good amount of programs that are non-cut programs, where if you want to put in the work and you're going to show up every day, you're making the team. So that's something that's really special, and especially in a town this size and the school this big, to have that many, it's something, I think that sets us apart from many departments.
Definitely.
I do think it's worth noting too that many of our programs have freshman standalone teams. So it's not just a traditionally JV and varsity program. So our 9th graders who are coming in almost always have an opportunity to participate at their level, which many schools do not have. So that increases our participation greatly.
Yeah, that's tremendous.
Ms. Harkin?
Okay, I have a comment, and I think 2 questions. Sorry. So I guess my comment is, in a year or two where it's been so important for kids to move. And I mean, I was also somewhat blown away by page 124. And I do have a question about that page as well, but which lists everything that between clubs and sports that kids have an opportunity to do, and you know, just the interaction that they get, whether and then the physical activity and sports. I think that was super important, and I'm so glad to see that that was able to stay intact, especially the last 2 years. So kudos to you for that. And then I just have 2 questions. What, and you might not know the answer to it now, I'm sorry, it's a bizarre question, but what percentage roughly of the clubs and teams on page 124 are coached or led by current teachers?
So I can talk to you about the club, I can tell you about the club one.
Yeah.
All of them for
Okay.
clubs are run by people within our building.
Okay.
So those are stipended positions, and the stipended amount you see here is what's agreed upon in the teacher's contract
Yep.
union. And so those we are posted for our people first and are almost exclusively filled by our people. Not necessarily a certified teacher, could be a para, could be someone who fills another role in the building.
Right.
But as far as coaches for
Yeah, I mean-
Matt, I think we have 6 or
Yeah.
7.
We have, and I could give you an accurate, count when I just looked at my coach's roster for
Yeah.
fall, winter, and spring, and I could definitely send that to you. I don't want to throw out a number and then be like, oh,
No,
man,
it's fine. I
this
guess
so-and-so,
I'll
yeah.
tell you why I'm asking. It's because I'm so mindful of I guess, we hear a lot about what the teachers have endured the last 2 years, and I'm just wondering what else they're taking on. I know with writing curriculum, coaching, their day job, so to speak, right? There's a lot going on, so I was just wondering what that percentage was. And then my other question regarding the student athletes was, it said 911. Is that what it said here?
Yes.
Where did I see that? Are those unique?
No, those could be, if your son played 3 sports, they would count them one
Okay.
time, because they are,
I was
no,
gonna-
not 911 unique.
I didn't
But
think
that's
so.
a
Okay, that
total
was my
count,
question.
yes,
Okay.
between fall, winter, and spring.
So,
That's a
and
good
then do you, Dr. Long, maybe this, maybe a better question for you.
Sure.
Have you guys identified the kids who haven't elected to do anything within the high school? Obviously, you don't know what's taking place outside.
So
And do we
actually,
know if there's anything if there's like a reason why they're not getting more involved, or how?
so we do. That's something that we, our counselors explore through counselor workshop. So at the beginning of every school year, we have a club fair, which basically during all the lunchways highlights every club that's possible. And every student goes to lunch, so everybody has access to the club fair. And then as a follow-up lesson, the counselors, they check in with each student to make sure they're connected to somebody. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a club or a sport, but to make sure that they have a person that they truthfully feel connected to in the building. For some, it is their coach or it's their debate team advisor or whoever the situation is. And for others, it's a member of PPS or something. So we don't necessarily know the specifics about who's participating in after-school type things, but we do for certain know that everybody in the building is connected to a trusted adult in some way.
Thank you.
Ms. Larkin, can I just add on page 126, and you may have this in your book too, you'll have the number of coaches and the cost of the coaches by fall, winter, and spring, all broken out here, right, so 76.
Yeah, I think she's asking just about our certified staff
Okay.
who also coach,
Okay,
right?
I
Is
just
that
want to
what?
point out, yeah.
Yeah,
Is that what you're asking?
Yes, and then the background was probably how it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Is, how much everyone's taking on, and, where maybe some stress.
I can tell you, I feel comfortable speaking on behalf of our coaches who work in our building, and that truthfully is their outlet, which is why they continue to do it. They choose to do that because it is a little piece of sanity and
Yeah.
craziness, and
It's fun.
that's why they continue to put in those hours.
And those are usually our coaches who've been here 10, 15, even 20 years, which is special.
Yeah.
Really special.
Very cool, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Harriman, Mr. Cruson? Not to put you
No,
on the
I don't
spot.
have any.
So,
Thank you.
thank you very much. So I'd like to follow up. So if it's not 9/11 unique, do we have the number in terms of unique players?
I don't have the numbers with me right now, but I do have those numbers up until, for the fall and the winter of this year. I do have those, which I can get those over to you.
Okay, would you be able to add it to the book for next year?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So now, I know someone who's got a son in unified sports, and she is just glowing about that program. It sounds like just an absolutely wonderful program, so thank you for all of the effort you put into that. I am a former marching band parent. Go Nighthawks, they were state champions, right? I went and I listened to them, and they look so small relative to what they were in the middle of the knots. But boy, that sound was just stupendous. I heard, sort of players of the big bands just saying, wow, did you hear that sound? So that's still alive and doing wonderfully. My question is, so we see the fees for the pay to play,
Yes.
and I know that that's managed in a particular way that is, to help with the total budget. Are there fees for all of the clubs, whether or not they actually spend money?
No. So it depends. There are pay-to-participate fees for all of athletics. There's also pay-to-participate fees for marching band. That a couple years ago, we actually added money to the budget to level out what the marching band parents were paying in comparison to what the athletic parents are paying. So other sports and activities do not, but they may pay for their trips on an individual basis. So if the debate team is going someplace and they're paying overnight, they'll pay for that particular trip versus a pay-to-participate kind of fee for a club.
Yeah, because I remember there was a point where the people were talking about fees for like book club, and it was just such a barrier that people would have to get over for, book club doesn't really cost any money. So I'm glad to hear that there are no fees for the activities other than essentially youth fees.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
And that's that. So, yes.
Can I ask one more? Are these all the clubs? Because because we, obviously at previous meetings, we've seen student representatives addressing the board, the same club, and I didn't see that listed on here.
So these are paid positions.
Okay.
We have probably a dozen to 25 other clubs that are non-paid volunteer positions that our faculty are advising. And so when a student wants to start a club, we tell them that they have to find an advisor and then write up a proposal for us, and then 99% of the time we say, yes, you can do it. However, those don't always go into the contract and become a stipended position.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is there a list of those somewhere?
I can get you one, yes. They're on the website. If you actually, our whole presentation from the club fair, we also did virtually. So if you go to the Newtown High School website, all of our clubs have a slide right on the website.
Thank you very much. Very nice job. Next is special education.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us. Just briefly, I want to introduce, this is Jean Milano. She is my administrative assistant. This is her first board meeting, so go easy on her. And then also, I have 3 supervisors of special education: Sonia Raquel, pre-K to 4, Maureen Hall, grades 5 through 8, and Dr. Paula Grayson, grades 9 through 21. Did you not hear me? Just want to make sure they can hear you. So you did receive an updated graph, I believe, of the special education, the number of special education students in the district. That actually replaces the graph, or the various column graph, on page 127. That was from July 3rd. The one that Dr. Riley spoke about the other night. We actually are at 666 special education students as of today. And one thing to point out also, since July 1, we've had 40 new students with special education needs move into district. So I'm not going to do a long presentation because I really feel that special education is so unique that there are so many questions that can be asked, so I want to provide you the time to do that. But I do want to point out that as was spoken to Tuesday, that the greatest challenge facing special education and pupil personnel at this time, are the increasing emotional needs of our students. Specifically since the pandemic, we have noticed an increase in the needs of our students, whether it's anxiety, depression, school phobia, school avoidance. Nationally, the emotional needs of students have been a concern as shared on all media outlets, as I'm sure you're well aware of. So one of the things that we put in place 5 years ago at the high school was a program called SAIL. It's a supportive alternative individual learning program. We did that 5 years ago, and I'm glad we have it today, because we did have students that were school avoidant. And instead of outplacing those students, we came up with a program with Dr. Longabuco and Dr. Grayson to find a way to keep our students in district, but providing them the specialized support that they needed. At that time, we had 1 teacher, which was grant funded at the time, and 5 students. Today, we have 2 teachers at the high school for SAIL and 17 students. And although 17 students might not seem like a lot, the needs have really changed, and 17 actually is a lot for a program such as that. So much so that we actually started the SAIL program at the middle school as well last year. That program began with the potential of 2 to 3 students, and currently that program started with 1 to 2 students beginning of last year, ended with 8 students, and began the school year with 8 students. So, and we do have some that we're looking at with that program. It has been successful. For the most part, the students that have been in that SAIL program, we've been able to maintain in district and meet their needs. I do want to point out actually also our out-of-district placements. And just to make sure that you completely understand, in the, our out-of-district placements has a number of 41 students. It's a little, it can be a little misleading when you look at that number. Out-of-district placement include the students that the district feels they can no longer provide an appropriate program for, so they place them through the PPT process in conjunction with the parents at a state-approved out-of-district school. However, included in that number of 41, there are DCF placements, and that means that DCF has put a student in foster care within Newtown, but that child has already been outplaced, so we are obligated to take on that financial cost. We have our students, I think that was spoken about earlier, that are in our agricultural programs and our magnet programs. So we have 10 students of that 41 that actually attend the agricultural schools, the magnet schools, and our DCF place. Okay? And honestly, from there, I'm just going to let you ask me questions because so much goes on in special education that I just wanted to be able to answer your questions and clarify anything that you don't understand.
Questions, starting again with Mr. Croissant and Ms. Harriman.
Hi, I just have a quick question. It was mostly because I'm not sure, I couldn't hear you. How many students do you currently have in SAIL in the middle school and in the high school?
So currently in the middle school, we have 8 students. We have some that we're evaluating now that are potential, but there are 8 confirmed students at the middle school, and there are 17 students in the SAIL program at the high school.
And do you have the staffing resources adequate to meet the needs of those students now and additional students next year?
We do right now, yes.
Okay, that's always my concern. I mean, I know special ed is probably one of the hardest departments to budget for. Actually, it's probably the hardest to budget for, but given what we know about, what's happened throughout the pandemic, I just want to ensure that we are maybe over-preparing, especially in that area. So, if you ever need additional resources, I always ask you that question. So I just want to make sure that, you're not cutting yourself short.
Yeah, no, I absolutely appreciate that. I have already spoken with Dr. Rodriguez in regards to the SAIL program at the high school. 17 students is a lot. It works now. We have the appropriate number of staff, but if it should grow, just given just given, like I said, the increase in mental health needs that we are seeing, I have spoken to Dr. Rodriguez. We're going to reassess it at the end of the year to see and to make sure that we have the appropriate resources for next year.
Thank you. It's such an important program, and I really appreciate all the work that went into implementing it. And I know it's been a long road, so I just want us to be supportive of that however we can, knowing that we might need to make some changes in those areas going forward.
Yeah, thank you for your support in that area so much.
Mr. Croissant?
Actually, I want to follow up on that previous question. How much growth did you see in between last year and this year in the high school sales program?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm going to turn around and look at Dr. Grayson.
Probably 8 additional.
7 to 10. 7
Okay,
to 10.
so you have 7 to 10 more this year than you had last year.
Yes. And of those, just to clarify, 3 of those students came from other districts.
Correct. So,
Beginning of the school.
right. So as I shared in the beginning, we had 40 students move into Newtown this year since July 1 with IEPs. So as Dr. Grayson said, some of those had already been placed in a similar program in the district that they came from.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions from the floor? Ms. Kuzma?
Thank you. Are you seeing, due to the pandemic, are you seeing an increase in the special ed referrals? And how do you determine like a projection for how many you might see next year?
So those are great questions. Yes, we are seeing an increase in referrals, more so this year than last year. It is difficult when you get those referrals because you really have to determine for a student to qualify if they received appropriate instruction. And then, so yes, to that question. And your second question was, what was that again?
I was just, how you determine,
Oh, right.
how you project, you know, what
Yeah, that, there's no way to project. Unfortunately, with special education, it's really difficult.
are you anticipating, just based on what you've seen with this pandemic?
You know, again, it's really hard to say. We've seen an increase this year, but last year we didn't have as many, if that makes sense. I think because the kids were hybrid, and you know, the elementary through 6 was all in. So we're seeing more of those referrals on the latter end this year, whereas last year's more elementary. So, you know, so some people got a little bit of a breather while others didn't, and vice versa for this year. I don't really see an increase coming. I see that steady flow. I don't see it slowing down at all. And right from the beginning. Sometimes we have a little lull in the beginning of the year, and we did not have that this year.
So, that being said, I noticed that there was a decrease in the para support. Can you
Right.
speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dr. Rodriguez spoke to that in her presentation on Tuesday night. That was at the middle school. We implemented the co-teaching model at the middle school, which provides the students with direct access to the special education teacher in those classes, as opposed to a para being the access person. And what we did was we had those para positions open going into this year. And as has been spoken to, we had no applicants for those positions, many of them. And so it actually provided us the time to observe and determine how that co-teaching was working, and if we actually needed those extra staff members in the classes now that we had the special education teachers. And, you know, I was in constant contact, as I am always, with Maureen Wall, who is at the middle school, and we just didn't need those positions because the special education teachers were there. It's actually worked wonderfully.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Morgan?
Okay, I have 2, and one's complicated.
Okay.
But, and thank you for fielding some of my questions via email.
Sure.
So I didn't have to take up too much of your time here. Because, and I just want to echo what Rebecca said. I mean, like twofold, tenfold. I can't imagine how hard it is to do this, and I think a lot of you know that. I know how important your work is. So I have to get my head around how I'm going to ask you this question. So there has been a decrease in overall, well actually if we go back in the chart that you provided here, so there has been a decrease of 243 students from 2018-19 to today, and an increase, so if we look at student enrollment, which this is not, but student enrollment's going this way, and special ed is going this way, right?
Correct.
So that comes to, and then you said we have an additional, so that's an additional 71 students over the course of the last 4 years that have gone into a program, while we've taken out 243 kids out of the total enrollment of the district, right?
Correct.
Like
That is a state trend.
They're going that, I
Correct.
totally get it.
Yeah.
So that being, and most of that's being, again, from your response to me via email, it's in the elementary schools where we're seeing the bigger.
Well, I sent you that breakdown.
Right, and to me it felt like, and I think it makes sense that you identify special ed kids early, right? I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So it makes sense. I saw the staffing when Dr. Rodriguez presented, I mean, how they are staffed accordingly, and it shows in your budget as well that that's where the staffing increase is. So it makes, I think that makes a lot of sense. So my question to you is, I don't think you have enough money for extended school year. And I want you to explain what,
Sure.
There is that's even after you explain this, I don't think you have enough.
Okay, so let me share. So it looks, so.
I get the gap because I asked Tanya about it.
Right.
And there's a great explanation for it that maybe you can just share with the rest of the board and the public as to why it looks like there's lessons in ESY.
Right, so, so ESY for the 2021 and 21-22 school years. So wait, let me start. So typically, ESY begins July 1, runs for 4 weeks, and then we have an extended ESY for some of our needier students. The last 2 years, July 4th, the way July 4th fell would have either shortchanged the ESY days or extended it out another week, therefore pushing the extra 2 weeks out. And that really is a concern with staffing, because the teachers typically who work ESY do want a certain amount of time off before they return. Whereas in that case, if we started July 1, they would have had no time off. They would have had a Monday and Tuesday off before returning on Wednesday. So we made for last year and for this year, we're starting ESY the last week of June, and then it goes into July. So part of the budget, the first week of June, is from last year's money, and then 3 weeks are this year's money.
Right.
So it looks like a significant decrease, but it actually isn't.
Right.
And we typically we have not run into staffing issues in the summer. We ran into staff who didn't want to work last year that typically worked because of COVID. But even when in 1920, even when COVID when the schools had shut down and we decided to have in-person ESY, we had to spread students out so much that we thought we would need a lot of extra staff for that, but in reality we didn't. So it actually has worked out really well. This year we are adding, actually, through a grant, an extra teacher for ESY just to service those kids in Wilson. So we'll have 2 teachers instead of 1 for the Wilson services in ESY. But in regards to everything else, it actually works out really well the way that it's planned.
So you
actually are
don't
planning for it now.
anticipate an additional number with the way that sped enrollment is going. You don't anticipate, especially with the 40 new kids in the district, we don't know, like,
So not everyone qualifies for ESY,
Right.
and there, and even the students that do qualify, many parents opted not to have their kids attend.
Okay.
So it actually works out.
But was that for COVID? Like,
That's
I just
always.
want to
always
make
it.
sure that, you know, I think that's really important for, you know.
I do
I
understand
know
what
you
you're
do,
saying,
but
yeah.
like, just make sure we plan for it in case they didn't attend because of COVID. We all are aware of the summer slide, even if you're not in special education, so I just want to make sure that you have enough money.
No, it's a great question. Even pre-COVID, I think we overplanned, and sometimes our classes are really small, nice small size in the summer. Many times, even parents that have said their child's coming, they've changed their minds.
Okay.
So we are really well staffed there. If I didn't think we were, I would definitely have asked for additional staff. One thing we also did because of COVID 2 years ago, which we are going to continue, we realized it really should have happened a long time ago, is summer school was always held pre-K to 12 all together in one building. Due to COVID 2 years ago, and we had to move, spread everyone out, we chose to do pre-K to 6 at the elementary school, Sandy Hook at the time, and then 7 through 12 at the high school. We found that it actually provided those 7th and 8th graders an ease about those transitions coming up, going to the high school, because they were already in there for the summer. And it really worked out well, and when we looked back, we said, why would we have 7th through 12th graders at an elementary school? So we are continuing that, and in my budget, I had added last year Dr. Grayson. So Maureen Hall and Paula Grayson both work summer school, so now we have our satellite one at the high school, and we have our elementary program at Sandy Hook this year at Head Start.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? So, if you wouldn't mind, could you call out where so we changed the Newtown Middle School schedule last year. And you have, I think, 2 special ed teachers that are on your, being added, but really they're being added because the board decided to change the Newtown Middle School schedule. So if you could call out where the impact of that schedule change has impacted your particular budget, I would appreciate it.
I'm not sure I completely understand the question. The teachers weren't added due to a schedule change. The teachers were added because we implemented co-teaching, and we wanted to make sure, as Dr. Rodriguez shared in her presentation, that we had a special education teacher attached to each cluster.
Yeah.
And Mr. Einhorn spoke to this as well, so now the special ed teacher doesn't have to cross cluster provide services. There's one for each cluster. So it wasn't due to the schedule, it was due to...
But it was a byproduct of that whole piece of work that the board did, and I just want to call out that the board basically really supported that whole program and the addition of the co-talk classes last year.
Oh, yes.
So this is the 2 teachers, any impact from your budget that was part of that whole shift of learning at the middle school. So I know we have the two teachers from the middle school, special ed. Any others that were in direct relationship to what we did?
No, so those 2 teachers were grant funded,
Mhm.
right, so that's why they're moving over, but no other teachers.
Okay.
There's no other impact.
What about impact because of COVID? I see things that would suggest that it was an impact because of COVID, because it's 0, 0, 0, and then it comes up. For example, the home ed, the special ed tutors, was that it jumped from that's page 130. It jumped from 1,600 to 35,000.
I see 35,000 last year and 35,000 this year. Is that what you're referring to at the bottom?
Was that because of COVID, or was that just sort of incidental to the fact that we have COVID?
That was in the budget last year as well.
No, we had COVID.
Right.
She's referring to the expended portion of the, for 1920, 2021, and those 2 years were affected by COVID. for sure, and that's for your homebound tutors?
Oh, right, I see what you're saying.
So
Right.
basically, that increase is in direct response to what we need to do to be able to handle COVID.
Well, I believe it's because we're back in school full-time. So when the students were hybrid last year, they didn't require homebound services because they had the option of being home, being a remote student only for the school year. So those students that may have had to go on homebound due to a medical condition, et cetera, we didn't have to provide those extra services for them. So now that we're back in a full year, typical where everyone's back in school, we do have students that now require some homebound services that we have to.
So basically, I had it completely backwards, yes.
It's okay, that's a great question.
Okay. A question in terms of dyslexia. So people are in special ed because of dyslexia. Is that the type of thing that one expects a certain number of these students to actually grow out of, as if they get the right training in time?
Well, no one grows out of dyslexia. They'll always be have dyslexia if they are classified as having it.
But
However, we do have trained staff that work with the students to provide the instruction they need, and we do have students that have made it through the program of the very specialized instruction that they're getting and no longer require that, and have learned the skills and the tools to get through the rest of their school.
So eventually there comes a point where they would not be considered special ed, or do we always keep an eye on those students?
That's a good question. It's really dependent. It is really dependent. I can't say whether they no longer need special education services. Some opt to change from an IEP, which is receiving that specialized instruction, to a 504 plan, where eyes are still on them, but they don't need as much support or that direct instruction in that area.
Okay. A question also on page 127. I know that these numbers were done in the fall, and out-of-district tuition, is that different now than it was when these books were created?
Well, out-of-district tuition honestly does change a lot. We have students that return to district. They can return at any time. We've had actually quite a few students return for varying reasons. And then we also have students that need to go out. And depending on the program that is chosen or that they're accepted to, it really can fluctuate. And I believe that these numbers are they're not from the beginning of the school
Yeah, are
year.
you referring to the current budget or the requested budget? Because next year's budget, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen yet.
Right.
The current budget has probably changed, not a lot, I don't think. We usually pretty much hit our target on that.
So we're in good shape then.
Yeah, we're in good shape.
Okay. The transitional, I see that that it jumped a certain amount. First off, that is an absolutely wonderful program.
The 18 to 22 program?
18 to
Yep.
22 program.
Yes.
So can you tell us what's going on with this particular line item? It's on 128.
Actually, yeah, I can explain. Oh. Okay, if you go to page 135, you can see the detail in the transition program. So if you recall, probably a few months ago, I requested a transfer for the revenue that was included in the job coaches line item. So we did make a shift, and you'll notice in the current requested budget that it's been reduced by that $84,000. And that was for tuition that's coming in for these students that are from other districts for this program. So that's why you'll notice a big, well, not a big difference, but you'll notice a difference over the current budget.
So then we have tuition coming in for this program that we're applying to teachers rather than to the program?
Correct. Well, I mean, it's within the program. The
Oh,
teacher
okay.
is within this program. So it was applied to the job coaches line item for many years, actually from the beginning of this program. We decided that it was a better fit to be in the teacher line item than the job coaches.
Okay, and the teacher line item is in some other place?
No, it's right on, it's the first line. It's teacher salaries.
But you're still having a jump of almost $40,000, whether I apply to job coaches or teachers, that should be a net zero, right?
There was some changes in the overall, so we also have job coach billing, so we have the one-to-one job coaches, and we do additional billing, so there are some differences in the current budget as compared to next budget. We had to make some adjustments for those numbers. We did cap our revenue at a specific amount, so there's some changes with the revenue. Not the staffing all remains the same.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is it's all just a question of bookkeeping?
It's a question of revenue and who's coming in, and how many students we plan for, and how much, I mean, the job coach billing is an additional billing, and we can't always count on who's gonna come in, who's gonna have the job coach, the one-to-one.
Correct. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood that to some degree.
It's a little confusing. I totally understand that, yeah.
Okay, and that's all I have. Does anyone have any other questions? Mr. Boros?
This is, I know this is not an easy one, but all these children that are on IEPs, is there anything that we can do, or that we should be doing to help whoever is monitoring all of these IEPs?
I heard some laughs.
Yeah.
That's a hard question.
That's a very hard question, and I'm just saying it because personally, I know that it's very difficult. We have a lot of children that are on IEPs.
Yeah,
A
we
lot.
absolutely do. Yeah,
And if they're-
it's a good question.
They're easy to write, but if they're not followed, it's almost like you need one person for
Yeah.
each child's IEP, monitor them
I would say
daily.
that's not parents. No, that is a good question.
I guess that's what.
That's mom and dad. Our staff do an amazing job working with the students and making sure that all the IEPs are implemented. They have a great relationship with their supervisors. If they have any questions, I speak with each supervisor typically 2 to 3 times a day, if not more. So we're all very much embedded in what is going on, and the supervisors aren't afraid to come and say to me, we really need this because it's just not working, or so-and-so is, their caseload's too high, or there's too many students at the school. And their staff are not afraid to go to them as well. So right now, I believe we're doing a really wonderful job with who we have and how we're doing it. I might say something different in 6 months, but right now we have a really wonderful department.
Ms. Larkin?
Just a follow-on, actually, what made me think, will EduClimber help
Yes.
your
Yes.
staff? And,
Yes.
I mean, because I think, I'm a stud parent, so, it's mom, it's dad, it's teacher, I have some,
Right.
she's wonderful,
I
but
know.
like, it's everybody, right? So it's a multifaceted
It
thing,
is.
right? But then, I think EduClimber sounds like it's gonna really pull everything together, so will that?
That really
Help
should help.
the process?
I think one of the goals of EduClimber is that will help in the process. We have been working, myself and supervisors have been working with Ian on that. And I know that she's putting a lot of work into the schools and the staff to get EduClimber up and running. So yeah, I'm very hopeful that that will help.
It looks like it will be cool, like for stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful program.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Any other questions? Ms. Harriman, Mr. Cruson?
I'm good.
I'm good too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pupil Personnel Services is next.
Health services. Yes. So Ann's going to speak to the health services. Pupil services also cover social workers, school psychologists, school counselors, which I can answer. Ann's going to speak to the nursing staff.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I think, as everyone knows, central to the life of every school nurse in the country for the past 2 years has been the COVID pandemic. And I just have to brag for a couple minutes because I think this community is very fortunate because we have a very strong group of school nurses. They're a group that has stepped up to every challenge, and there have been many, many challenges presented over the last couple of years. They have put in dozens of extra hours managing the virus and also answering the many, many, many questions that come into their office, continue to come into their office daily. And this on top of attending to the usual responsibilities, which are truly
No, they're having a hard time hearing you. Can you just move the mic closer to you?
I'm just very masculine. All of this on top of attending to their usual responsibilities, which truly, I speak for them, but that's their favorite part of the job and the place they'd like to focus their energy. And I do want to thank the board for your support during this really difficult time over the past couple of years. It's really appreciated. In terms of the health services budget, there were very few little changes made. Most of them are related to shifting of staff to just accommodate changes in student assignment, moving from one school to another, that kind of thing. Equipment repairs, there were a couple of minor equipment repairs that were included. Mileage has actually gone down a bit because we are not traveling as much as we did for professional development and that kind of thing. Office supplies also has decreased somewhat because we've moved almost entirely to digital communication. So, to answer questions?
Questions for health services? Mr. Boros?
I know from being there, and thank you for mentioning to all of us, how important it is for the children to have the nurse to go to. And I don't mean for cuts or for whatever. They go to the nurse to talk or to calm down or to get out of class or whatever, but to have someone like that to be able to go to. So the question is, do you have enough staff for this?
I believe that we do have adequate staff right now. We're in good shape.
Thank you.
Mr. Ramsey?
I concur with Mr. Boros. Nurses are awesome. And, in addition to that, I know when I taught at the middle school, every now and then the staff needs to attend, go to a nurse, and they're just a tremendous resource. I just have a couple of practical questions because I'm a new board member. I noticed with the nurse staff training, that's a line item of 14,000 some odd. What's that? What type of training do they receive?
Staff training generally is professional development that the nurses are required to do, and strongly encouraged. So we try to make opportunities for them, for each of them.
So is that in-house or
both, and
yeah.
actually it's both in-house, and they go to specific professional development opportunities that may address their own needs, their individual needs as a nurse. But we have had speakers come in. I'm working on one right now, hoping to bring someone in for February. And that has happened over the past couple of years. They've taken advantage of a lot of virtual professional development that's been available. And we'll probably continue to do that now that we've discovered it. That makes it's a good way, it's an easy way for people to access that training.
And then the other question is pertaining to extra work for non-certified nurse. me the note, I'm not sure what.
Is it non-public, nurse?
43. No, I can answer that. That's actually the clerical portion, that's not.
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you.
I think that extra work addresses summer needs that we have in order to get supplies out to where they need to be for the start of the school year.
Right, so similar to overtime type thing.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the floor? Ms. Harriman, Mr. Cruson?
No, thank you. Thanks for all your hard work, though.
No, thank you, I'm good.
Thank you very much. Now, you got more you're going to say for pupil personnel, or do we ask questions specific?
You can ask questions specific to that. I don't have anything else to add.
Any questions for social workers, guidance? Okay, I have a couple. COVID has been really, really hard on our teachers and our staff. You know, as I read this, I think of the guidance counselors support the students, the psychologists support the students. My sense is that the social workers support the students because now there's so much social emotional learning that is being done within the school. Who supports the staff?
That's a great question. Each other. Yeah, they have each other.
It's everyone. It's not only they have each other, the leaders, and we also have the HR department, and Suzanne works, very hard to get whatever resources they need.
Do we have, I never thought I would say this, but we have what we need in the budget to make sure that we support?
We do, and we build a lot of that into our own professional days where we work with our staff. And, I will sit, if I think about the culture and climate committees, the teacher forum committee, and we often ask, what kinds of needs. That's why we had the day where it was just a day of a non-stress, if you recall last year. That came from the teachers directly, what do they really need? And that, of course, was all collaborative, and they went out and just had a really good time together, and it was all physical, and it really was stress relief, and that was what they needed. So we're always working with them to see what it is they want and ask us. But the HR, Suzanne works, she's done a lot, and we've even had grants where there's been yoga, teachers take that as stress relief. So we do really try to meet whatever needs they have.
And the other thing, again, because there's this fine line between special ed and the pupil personnel. I think I saw in here somewhere the IEP initials, and I also see monitor the SRBI process. What is that? Is there overlap, or is this really all for just non-special ed students?
So our social workers and school psychologists typically work with our students with IEPs for counseling and social skills groups, lunch groups, things such as that. And our school counselors that we have at every building, in the district, work on with the students who are in SRBI. And sometimes there's a crossover, but we typically like to, let the school counselors work with those students that are not identified as needing special education services to provide them interventions and the social skills or social groups that they need.
Okay, thank you. I think that was probably it. Just check. That's it. Okay. You're free to go. Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you. Moving on to curriculum. Pardon? Since they're taking, I think if you mind film there.
Since I'm up here, I'm going to take off my mask so everybody can hear me. Good evening, board members, and thank you for the opportunity to share the highlights of the curriculum and instruction budget proposal for the 22-23 school year. Before I provide my overview, I wanted to just thank our incredible staff who, despite the challenges of the past 2 years, continue to move forward by working together to update curriculum, improve instructional practices, and learn new tools such as iReady and EduClimber, which improve our ability as a district to monitor student progress and address student needs. The content of my budget focuses entirely on supporting our staff deliver a high-quality education to the students of Newtown. Forward two things. While the goals of my budget do not change from year to year, what funds are spent on does. In looking at my budget, you will notice that unlike a typical school budget, where many of the budget lines remain flat or have slight fluctuations, or the funding remains flat across lines, you'll notice in my budget there is great variability in the line items from year to year. The curriculum and instruction annual budget should reflect changes in curriculum and instructional priorities. Needs are determined through a variety of channels. The exchange of ideas that take place throughout the year with curriculum committees, conversations with individual and small groups of teachers, dialogue with the curriculum instruction subcommittee of the board, feedback from parents and students, consultations with administrators, firsthand observations of our students' classroom experience, new initiatives resulting from state or federal mandates, as well as unanticipated conditions that impact the delivery of education, such as the pandemic. If I am doing my job well, I am constantly gathering information over the course of a year that will determine what next steps are needed and how they should be prioritized. And that is how my budget is built. Within the curriculum and instruction budget requests are broken into 4 categories: staff and curriculum development, staff training, contracted services, and textbooks. Going in order in your budget books, I will start with staff and curriculum development, which can be thought of as having 3 subsections. Curriculum development is the largest line in this section. These funds represent payments to teachers for summer work as well as work completed throughout the school year in creating or revising curriculum. Some of the planned projects for the 22-23 school year include revisions to grades 1 and 2 social studies, anticipated revisions to K-2 reading to improve alignment with the science of reading, revisions to grades 7 and 8 science, completion of the 7 and 8 ELA curriculums, revisions to English, social studies, and science courses at the high school, the development of a new linear algebra course, and the development of 2 new senior electives. Moving on to staff development. This section also supports staff members who serve as coordinators, trainers, or mentors to other staff members, and those who serve on district committees or planning committees. You will see funds earmarked here to support summer planning time for our elementary school leadership teams and payment for our middle school project adventure teachers for participation in a required summer course. Lastly, this section, which is subject and planning committees, includes funding for all of the district level committees that meet throughout the year to plan curriculum, professional development, and as well engage in collegial conversations regarding instructional practice. Staff training is a little different, and this deals specifically with training or professional development provided to staff by outside consultants or for fees associated with attending out-of-district conferences. For 22-23, I am requesting funds to further support training of our Project Adventure teachers through attendance at an out-of-state conference, or workshop, I should say, continuing NGSS training with our high school science teachers, attendance of selected staff at various regional and national conferences, presenters for our professional development days, second year of implementation support for Bridges Math at the K-5 level, first year implementation support for the new 6-8 math program, a consultant to facilitate the development of Newtown Public Schools' vision of a graduate, and professional development opportunities for our ESL teachers. Moving on to contracted services, you will find our annual cost for Rubicon Atlas, our curriculum management platform, as well as many of the digital platforms that have been added to our teachers' toolkits, including an upgraded Dibbles assessment platform, Seesaw, Screencastify, BrainPop, iExcel, Newzella, Achieve 3000, and Learning A to Z. In textbooks, the biggest driver will be for resources for our new 6-8 math program. 2 programs are currently being piloted, and we anticipate making a final selection in May. Funds are also being requested to continue our subscription for Mystery Science, which is used to teach science at the elementary level, and for the purchase of an updated edition for our current AP Economics course at the high school, which will support our newly revised AP Econ curriculum, which is planned for the board's review in March. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions? Mr. Cruson, Ms. Harriman?
I don't have anything at the moment.
Sorry, I was having trouble coming off mute. Thank you, and thank you so much. You gave an excellent presentation, and I heard every word, and so I appreciate that sitting at home. I know it's a tough situation, so I'm just grateful for you and your hard work in the presentation and how clearly you explained it. The one question I have, and I know you've heard me talk about this before, and you and I have talked about it before, but we talked about like a curriculum audit for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and looking at all of our curriculum in that way. And I know that's completely a huge job, and you know, outside of Mr. Johnson's exact job description, and obviously not something that you could take on your own. So I'm just wondering if there was any thought given to adding some funding for an outside consultant to help start that process, or just offer support to that process.
Yes, that's a great question. Actually, we're looking at potentially doing something within this year and not waiting till next year. There are some additional funds in the money that has been set aside for curriculum in my budget right now, and I've been in contact with Ed Advance to discuss doing an audit with some of our staff members alongside them, so that we can learn the process that they apply in order to build internal capacity for us to do that work in-house. We have a tremendous amount of formal curriculum, a lot more than many of our neighboring districts, which a lot of people don't realize. You know, if you're looking at prioritizing that type of review, you probably want to start with our social studies department, and at the high school alone, I think we have 17 different courses that are offered. So it's not realistic to think we could do an audit of all of our curriculum, but I do think that with the tools that they have at Ed Advance, if we apply them to some select curriculum in-house with some of our staff members who review curriculum, we would be able then to transfer that and build that capacity to have that work ongoing for any curriculum that would come before us for review.
Thank you so much. I love the idea of starting sooner rather than later because of the enormous amount of work that it's going to be, you know, getting that process rolling and building the internal capacity, I think is great. So if there's any additional dollars that need to be put in place for stipends for those from our staff that are taking on that role, please let us know as well.
I will keep you posted. We're in the early planning stages, but as we develop it, I would be sharing that with the CNI subcommittee, and that would come back to you guys as well.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Ms. Kuzma?
Thank you. In the contracted services, all the things that were added, I know mostly due to remote learning, the Seesaw, IXL, all those, are those being used frequently and as like consistently throughout every classroom, or is it just kind of a filler for some?
So that's a great question, and I can say honestly, it's hard to measure usage at this point. And it's also hard to measure what is valued and in the long run, what we will ultimately retain. Because when we got it, some of these things have been in place. I just want to say that. Like IXL, we had that prior. We did expand it up to the high school, so, and then some of them are new. And it has been a lot on teachers. So not all teachers are using all tools. And that is something that we would really like to look more closely at. Many of the platforms do provide usage summaries, so we're able to look at it. But what we haven't really been able to do to the degree that I think we would need to is have those conversations with teachers about which of these tools have they found to be the most beneficial, which things do they really want to hold on to, and which things would they want to let go of. So I see the end of this year, we will be able to have a good look at the usage rates over this year. And then hopefully next year, if we can get some stability in what's happening in our schools, we would be able to have those conversations, and perhaps we wouldn't be renewing all of these for the following year.
Further questions? Mr. Voros?
And Lexia,
That's being covered by a grant.
thank you. Fabulous program.
Mr. Ramsey?
So I noticed on page 146, you have the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development Conference.
Yes.
Is that something that pertains to multiple administrators, that they attend that in
So it
scope of curriculum?
It would be my hope that Dr. Percaro and I would be able to attend the conference in 22-23. We'll see. I haven't been to a conference since 2018. When I last attended that conference, and it's an outstanding national conference. It is, curriculum developers, assistant superintendents, directors of teaching and learning from around the country, and I think it would be particularly helpful to go next year because I think we all sense that we're never going to go back to exactly the way things were before the pandemic, and sorting through some of the benefits of what we've learned through the pandemic, some of the tools we have. It's helpful to attend those national conferences and hear from experts and other colleagues across the country in terms of how they're dealing with things. So yes, it would be for 2 people.
Oh, that's great.
They're usually out of state, so that includes travel and lodging, meals, and the other associated costs.
No, those are really great. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? I have just a few, and you're probably just going to get them rapid fire. I hope that's okay. We had a PE health coordinator that seems to have disappeared. Is that just elsewhere in the budget?
No, we are looking to dissolve that in anticipation of hiring the director of, I can't remember what the title is. Coordinator.
Of health and wellness? Okay.
Of health and wellness, yes.
And Team Hub for new teachers, is that just someplace else that,
I didn't hear what you said.
the Team Hub for new teachers that we had last year, this year?
Yes, so we were able to, the state had planned, last year we were told to plan to have to purchase that, but they since backed off of that, and there's no payment required for it.
You have a couple of items here that are listed as 0.
Those, actually I talked to Tanya about those, their errors. The CRA and the ATMNE, those are actually listed, should be listed under attendance at regional conferences. One is the Connecticut Reading Association, and the other is the Associated Teachers of Mathematics of New England. I usually pay for the language arts consultants and the reading teachers to attend the reading conference, and I'm just going to mention that because I know Mr. Moretti mentioned Some of the principals will send additional staff, they pay for that out of their budget. So that's why those are zero, but they're incorporated in the figure above. Responsive classroom was just somehow carried over, it wasn't removed from last year's budget. So that, there's no, I'm not requesting anything for responsive classroom. And the team training was the same thing. That had been in the budget and was removed. So those, you could cross them out, really. They shouldn't have been there in the first place.
And then in terms of brain IXL and Newsela achieved 3,000 learning A to Z. They did not show here, but I know we had IXL and Newsela. Did they come off of grant? Were they in other places in the budget?
They're here under contracted services?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are grant funded in the current year.
Oh, I see, in here.
So these are all off of grants. Okay. And
Is that it?
you know, it's just, you have done such a fabulous job bringing structure to the whole curriculum process. Interacting with our curriculum instruction committee, top notch. I was listening in for 2 years. It was such a joy listening in. And everything you do to help our curriculum is, from what I can see, absolutely spot on. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So that brings us to public participation. Now comes my long read. As a Board of Education, we have a duty to provide a respectful and equitable public space for all members of our community to share their input with the board. It is my responsibility as chair to facilitate communication between the public and the board within that space. Behavior such as loud and disruptive clapping, yelling, or incendiary comments that in practice quiet opposing views thwarts the board's duty to provide a respectful and equitable space for public input. Also, comments from the public to other members of the public have no place in the board's public participation. If public participation becomes disrespectful or intimidating, I may be forced to close or limit public participation, something I really don't want to do, just to let you know. And instead, I may have to ask that remaining comments be sent to the board by other means like email. During this particular public participation, commentary may address the agenda or may introduce issues for the board to consider in the future. The board does not engage in dialogue during either public comment period. Please, we request speakers be respectful and limit comments to no more than 3 minutes. And we do not discuss personnel items or student matters in public. If you desire more information or answers to specific questions, please do email the Board of Education. Does anyone have any public participation? Anyone from the phone have any public participation? *6. Hearing none, thank you all for coming, board members. I hope that you enjoyed this meeting as much as I did, and it's not after 10. So do I have a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion we adjourn.
I
Is there a
second the
second?
motion.
Okay, first, Mr. Boros motioned, Mr. Ramsey seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.